Well, we're very fortunate that whilst we're here at the Australian Catholic Youth Festival, we can pause for a moment to have a conversation with Archbishop Julian Porteous. Now, it's wonderful that he can spare a few minutes to speak with us, particularly because he is the Australian patron of Shalom. Archbishop, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure, Ronan.
Now, before we talk more about this wonderful event that we sit here amongst now, can you tell us a bit about how you've journeyed here in regards to your home archdiocese? Tell us about that.
Yes, well, I'm the Archbishop of Hobart in Tasmania, which of course is an island separate to the rest of Australia. So I say that our contingent are the only overseas visitors to the ACYF. So we have 80 young people who have travelled from different parts of Tasmania to be present here. I've been the Archbishop in Hobart for the last 6 years. Yeah. And it's a great joy to see the young people from Tasmania really want to engage with the ACYF.
So it's a big event that we've walked into here. Several thousand young people have gathered with their leaders here in Perth, Western Australia. It was probably 1 or 2 flights for your pilgrims to get here, am I correct?
Well, normally it would be, but there's now a direct flight.
Fantastic.
From Hobart directly to Perth, so we were able to get on that, and so we had a good swag of people on that one plane, that one flight from out of Hobart.
Excellent. Now, to anyone who's watching this who doesn't know much about the Australian Catholic Youth Festival, can you give them a sense of what takes place here?
Well, I think we'd have to say that the Australian Catholic Youth Festival was inspired by World Youth Days, and when we had the World Youth Day in Sydney in 2008, I think that had a very marked effect upon the Church in Australia. I think it presented to the Church there is a way, a dynamic, fresh, vital way which the Church can engage with young people. And I think the experience, particularly of the World Youth Day in Sydney, led to the idea, well, why don't we run our own mini version or our own national expression of World Youth Day, and that's become known as Australian Catholic Youth Festival. So this is the 4th occasion that these festivals have been staged in Australia, and they've been growing in numbers, and I think generally speaking the young people are really responding very, very positively to the experience.
Now, when we walk around the Australian Catholic Youth Festival, it's certainly very vibrant. We see a lot of smiling faces, we hear a lot of noise and enthusiasm. It actually reminds me of one of your books that I've read, Fresh Wine and New Skins.
Now,
yes. Can you perhaps use that analogy, that scriptural analogy for us to tell us what is taking place here on a spiritual level at an event like this?
Well, it's interesting you should mention that book. One of the things I've become aware of is that really in the last 50 years there's been an extraordinary new vitality coming to the Church, particularly through various movements. And these movements have really found expression in all sorts of different cultures, in all sorts of different backgrounds, but there are many common elements. And the reason I researched this book was because I became aware that while there were many things happening in very many different places across the world, yet there was a similar spirit, a similar character to them. And one thing in particular was that they were bringing a new vitality, not only to living the Christian life, but the desire to share their faith experience, to bring others into the Christian life, into the life of the Church. And ACYF, I think, has been building on this movement that has really swept across the Church over the last 50 years. And we're now, I think, benefiting greatly as a Church generally to these various movements that have emerged in the last 50 years.
Now, there's obviously a big youth presence at this event, and that's part of the mandate of what we're here for. But I know one of your portfolios is renewal and evangelisation more broadly than even youth. So what does an event like this do for actually the Australian Catholic Church, bigger than just youth ministry?
Well, I think it firstly makes a very strong declaration. In an age when a lot of people think, the Church is dying, the Church isn't able to be relevant to the society, it's not able to engage with young people, many people can have the impression the Church doesn't know how to communicate and engage with the culture. I think something like ACYF makes a completely opposite declaration. It says, no, we can, and we do, and young people do respond. And I think it also sends a broader message to the church to say that if the church engages in its great mission, its primary mission of bringing people to know Christ, if we move in that direction and we find the ways that we can communicate, the ways we can talk, the language we can use, the programs, the expressions that can engage with people, then we can renew the church. We can revitalise the church. So I think ACYF is a great declaration. This is what the church can do. If it can reach the young people, it can reach married couples, it can reach people of all different backgrounds and situations and help them discover that the heart of the church is a living and dynamic faith. At the heart of the church, ultimately, is the discovery and encounter with Jesus Christ.
Now, you talked there about how some people might criticise the church for something like its engagement with culture, for example. Someone might look at the scale of this event, because it is enormous, and say, oh, why should we be focusing so much resource on this event and so much energy on an event like this? Now, I've been here and seen it, so I can see why, but for people who haven't, why is it that we place so much focus on the value of this type of event?
Well, I think, and I might speak more particularly from my experience in Tasmania. Tasmania has a relatively small, percentage-wise, Catholic population in comparison with other parts of Australia. And young people can feel that the church is small, doesn't have facilities or experiences that can really touch and engage young people. I know already the young people who've come here have gone, wow. They've had this broader experience of the church, just like World Youth Day does. Young people can come from a country and they can feel, look, as a Catholic young person, I feel part of a minority. I can sometimes just find it very difficult to answer the challenges people put up. Oh, the church is not relevant, the church is, whatever. And then they come to World Youth Day, as they come to ACYF, and then they get built up. They say, no, the church is alive, the church is dynamic. And so I know the young people from Tasmania will go back invigorated, enthused, confident, and proud of being Catholic. And I think that's the value of putting on an event like this, that in a way the smaller, we do a number of things for evangelisation in Tasmania, but we can't do anything of this scale with this sophistication that really inspire young people. So I think at this moment, these sort of events I think are very, very important for the nurturing of young people, the nurturing of faith, and I believe we've seen already that through the World Youth Days, through the other ACYFs that have been conducted, that young people go back and they do stuff. That they're confident and they see possibilities and they want to engage. So I'm expecting from the participation of our young people here in the ACYF here in Perth that we'll see fruit coming forth from it in Tasmania in the years to come. And this is really what I think the value is, not just young people having a great experience, but the young people being inspired and encouraged and then wanting to go back and contribute themselves and get involved in things and do things. And I've seen so many young people already who've been to World Youth Days, been to ACYF, come back in their own parish, there's been no youth group, and they've gone to the priest and say, we've got to start a youth group. We've got to do stuff, Or there are things on, and they come and they bring their friends because they've had an experience and they say, I want to share this. I want other young people to discover what I've discovered, to experience what I've experienced. So I think at the present moment, I think these sort of events are very, very important for the nourishment and inspiration of young people back in their own diocese, back in their own parishes.
So if we talk about this as an event and use the word experience as well, can I get you to reflect on your own life for the moment? Because you sit here now and it's wonderful to see the bishops that are here, witness of the Church of Christ. Can you tell us, what are some of those mountaintop experiences in your own life, perhaps, that have really helped you in your faith?
Well, I think in my own faith journey, I go back, and I was talking to some young people actually this morning, just when we're chatting around the place, and they're asking me some questions about my own background. And I just said, look, I just had a really profound experience in my own life when I was about 22 years old. Yep. And wow. It was just, even though at that stage I was a seminarian, but I had this deep personal experience of the presence of God, the love of God, and it just revolutionised my faith. And it really, that has always been the inspiration for me, for what I've been doing the rest of my life, first as a priest and now as a bishop. So having moments of encounter with God, moments of grace, perhaps moments of conversion, moments of discovering the reality of their faith is something so important, because it then becomes a wellspring for the rest of my life. Now that's certainly true for me. And one of the other things that for me was very important was that Pope Paul VI wrote, I think, one of the great milestone documents after the Second Vatican Council. In Latin it's called Evangelii Nuntiandi. It's to take the gospel to the world, announce the gospel in the world. And I remember reading that as a young priest. I was then just 1 year ordained. I remember reading that document, and when he said these words, he says the church exists in order to evangelise. Now when I heard those words, wow. Suddenly everything came together. Suddenly that experience that I had some years before as a seminarian, and this desire in my heart to help people experience what I had experienced, all came together. I said, that's what my mission as a priest is to be. This is the mission of the church. Very simply to evangelise. And so the rest of my priesthood, I've been a priest now 45 years, the rest of my priestly ministry has always been focused on that. One way or another, I've done it. So I put on big rallies. We had a number of rallies in Sydney called Jesus Christ at Manly Oval, Jesus Christ at Belmore Oval. I'd set up a thing called Pastoral Training School, which put over 1,000 young people into training and formation, evangelisation and pastoral ministry. Had a thing in Sydney called SEEN, which was a Congress on Evangelisation, which we ran right in the centre of the city, centre of Sydney. All sorts of things. Over my years as a priest and now as a bishop, I just keep wanting to find things that we can do to engage with people and let them have opportunity to experience the presence of Christ, to experience their faith, to discover the reality of God, whatever it may be, something that touches and transforms their faith, their life. And so that's what my life has been about, one way or another.
Now, in regards to that aspect of taking the gospel to the world, and events are a key way that we do it, like we're part of that right here, right now, can you link that with the media in the sense that, like, Shalom is obviously about taking the gospel to the world through what's taking place. I know you've been part of many things to do with the media. Can you tell us sort of why you're also passionate about that and the opportunities that are there for the church?
I often think, and at one stage there, I developed a digital radio station because I became aware that you might put on an event and you might get a top speaker. Now there may be 200 people at that event, you know, and they think that was a fantastic talk, it was a great experience, you know. I think, what about all the people who didn't have the opportunity to be there, to experience it, you know? The same thing here. We've got 5,500 people, which is fantastic. But there are thousands and thousands.
In this city alone,
hundreds of thousands, millions of other people who could taste something of what happens here through the media. You know, it's really interesting. The other day, I'd written a piece, it was called Will We Hear the Plea of the Young, which was where young people have been asked what do they think the church needs at the present moment. And I wrote this, and I went on a little blog site. I've already had young people come up to me here at the thing, say, that was a great article, Bishop. Thank you for writing it. I said, you nailed it. What you said was what we think is needed for the church, because I was talking about holiness and becoming saints, you know, and they were coming up to. Now, I'd written that, and I didn't know if anybody was going to read it, you know. Would anybody know about this article that I wrote? But because we're in the social media, and I heard already that young people are, then you got to listen to this blog by Bishop Porteous, and they flick off and send off to their friends. So that's a paramedia. The paramedia is that somebody can say something, or there can be an event that's on, but the media can take it far, far more broadly.
Isn't that wonderful to hear? Because
Yeah.
holiness and saints is not a new idea.
No,
It's,
no, no.
yeah, it might be very much needed now as much as ever, but that's not a new idea. But dispersing it through
Yeah.
through the media is the idea. Yeah.
So through media, you can write something.
Mm.
You know, I might preach at a mass. I might have a couple hundred people at the mass, but I could go back to my office and write something. It goes on social media. Thousands
Yes. Yeah.
could read it.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's the paramedia.
Yeah.
The paramedia is it takes it to audiences. And, you know, I remember when we set up Cradio, I was really surprised. We got emails from Russia.
Wow.
You know, here we were operating in Sydney at that time. We got emails from people in Russia who had listened to podcasts that we had displayed. That's the paramedia. That's the potential of using the new media. And that's why things like Shalom are so important, because this event, among other things that they do, this event can be communicated all across the world. Who knows? Who could be just flicking through a channel, oh, what's this about? And they engage with it, they get touched by it. That's why media is so important. That's why Catholic presence in the media is so important at the present moment.
Wonderful. So, look, we're talking about events and contemporary culture. That's always changing. The media is always changing. If we fast forward 10 years from now, just to choose a figure, what do we want our church in Australia to look like in 10 years? Could you put something in our mind that we can work towards in 10 years' time?
What a great dream. Look, I think in the end, what we want to see in the church is the church, firstly, is simply able to be an effective instrument of enabling people to discover Christ, to meet Christ. I think that's the key thing, that firstly, the mission of the church is to help people know and love Christ. Now, I suppose if I was to dream for the church, I would dream that this is what the church was really doing.
Yep.
I often use the phrase that we need to put the church on a missionary footing. In one sense, we have to move from saying, let us just be communities of believers in our local parishes, or let's belong to organisations which are nourishing and nurturing faith. That's very good. No, we've got to make a shift.
Yes.
We've got to shift from saying, let's just live our Catholic faith, to let's become a church that proclaims our Catholic faith.
Yeah.
And let's see people step forward. Now, we have the musicians like Father Rod Galea, who's a great communicator through the medium of music. We have many wonderful Catholic speakers now in Australia who can really articulate the faith and communicate the faith. But in the end, I think the most important means for the spread of the faith is the witness of ordinary, everyday Catholics.
Yes.
Among their families, in their workplace, among their friends, that they have a passion in their own hearts. They have a desire in their own hearts to say, I want people to know what I know through my Catholic faith. I want people to experience what I've experienced through my Catholic faith. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to share with people. I'm going to reach out to people. So in 10 years' time, I'd like to see the whole of the Catholic Church in Australia with a strong missionary vision, a strong missionary desire, if you like, with their hearts burning to want to share with others what they themselves know and discover through their Catholic faith.
It's wonderful to hear that. Thanks for sharing that with us. In fact, thanks for your encouragement of Shalom. Thanks for your involvement, your wonderful witness here at ACYF. And a special thanks for sitting down to chat with us now.
That's a pleasure, Ronan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.